Fran, thank you so much for being here today.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me, Lupe.
So, I like to start every interview by asking guests, as a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Hmm. As a kid, I definitely wanted to be an author just because I
Mm,
loved reading so much.
mm,
But I have to tell you, as the daughter of immigrants, the idea of being an author just felt so unattainable. It felt like beyond aspirational. I grew up doing a lot of work for both of my parents because they both had small businesses. So I was like doing invoices for my dad's landscaping business when I was in first grade, and I was helping my mom with her tailoring business. I'd help her with marketing. So I kind of like had this feeling that I was going to end up going into business because I've
mm.
really been a business person my whole life. So I had a feeling that was going to be my direction, which by the way is what I ended up doing. I ended up going into business. But then come full circle, 5 years ago, I came out with my first book, The Myth of the Nice Girl. And last year, Embrace the Work, Love Your Career. So
Mm.
it's kind of interesting that, yes, I am in business. I was in corporate for a long
Mm.
time. I've been doing startup investing. I love business. But now I'm also an author and I write about women and advancing women in the workplace and
Mm.
kind of behaviors that might hold us back at work. And it's all kind of come together.
Mm.
If that makes
Oh,
sense.
yes, it does. Just curious, where did your parents immigrate from?
From Italy, from the very southernmost point. So, like literally across from Sicily, the
Mm.
toe of the boot. It's an
Yes.
area called Reggio Calabria.
Mm.
It's a beautiful area. They lived in a very poor
Mm.
part of the area, and so many immigrants. They were just
Mhm.
looking for a better life
Mm.
for their family. So they moved over at the same time as their siblings, their cousins, their
Mm.
neighbors in the community. And they all settled in a town called Mount Kisco in New York, which is about an
Okay.
hour north of Manhattan.
Okay.
And there are over 1,000 people now that live in Mount Kisco that all kind of come from that one little
Oh my
town
gosh.
in Italy, which is amazing.
Mm.
And I grew up in Mount Kisco and now I live in the next town over. So
Oh,
like
wow.
I'm very close to my family, my immediate family, my extended family,
Mm.
all the paisans, all of it.
Oh, I love that. I'm a daughter of immigrants. My parents are Mexican. My dad immigrated to the US when he was 17. So I can
Um,
connect to that story. There was looking for better opportunities, work. And so I
yeah.
didn't
And you
know that
give
was
them
a
so
part of
much
your
credit,
story.
right?
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Just
Yes.
if I had to do that now, like just pick up and
Mm.
move to
Oh,
a
so
country
scary.
where I don't speak the language, I don't know what I'm going to do for work. It's not like these jobs were just here waiting for them.
Yeah. Go
They
out
had
and
to
look for
figure it
them.
all out.
Yeah. And then your parents starting in businesses, that must have been scary. I think about my dad not really knowing very good English and not having very good English and buying a house and cars. And I just,
Oh, right, negotiating, like just like
yes.
all of it. I know. Well, I don't know. Were you a translator for them?
Yeah. My dad had a work injury and I just came back from the hospital. They were redressing his wounds and I was the translator. The
You're,
nurse asked me, are
you're
you the
still the
interpreter? And I said, yes,
translator.
I am.
Yeah.
You got to the dream of being an author. Tell us
Yeah.
about the journey to this point. So you mentioned corporate. I'd love to hear more about your corporate journey, what you learned. I know
Yeah.
I'm reading your book now, I'm about halfway through, and I love it. I've always thought in the past, maybe not so much now, but I need to be maybe more assertive or more whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And I love
Yeah.
that your book talks about owning who we are. And I'm good with relationships and connections. And those are my superpowers.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
go ahead.
exactly right. I mean, you got it. That's really the crux of the book is I can't tell you how many times over the course of my career I've been told that I'm too nice. You know, you're too nice to get to the corner office, you're too nice to get ahead, you need to be
Mm,
tougher. What I realized was that there's so much power in being kind, in being compassionate, in being empathetic
mm,
because when you're all those things, they really help you to build relationships, right? Because relationships are based on trust. When I think about all of my career defining moments, they all come back to relationships.
mm,
Like there was one big project I was working on, and I needed to get technology resources allocated to my project from a central technology team. I had a great relationship with the chief technology
mm,
officer. So I could go in and say, hey, I'm working on this project. Here's what I'm thinking, like the return is going to be. I'm really excited about it. I'm going to need a few people on your team. And without those people, I couldn't have executed. My team couldn't have executed, right? So I can give you so many examples like that. Or maybe I was negotiating a contract and being able to be empathetic and put myself in the shoes of the other person and really understand what they're looking to get out of this agreement, out of this partnership. What value are they looking to create? Asking those questions, listening, actively listening. These are all qualities that helped me be more effective in my job and create value for whatever company I was working for. And I think eventually it really helped me get to the C-suite. It helped me now to be a successful entrepreneur. I was in corporate for many, many years. My last job in corporate was president of digital at Time Inc., which was the world's largest magazine publisher. Amazing. I spent
Which
10
is
years there.
huge.
Huge. It was dream job.
Yeah.
Dream job. Like when I tell you, oh my gosh, so many of those magazines, People, In Style, Entertainment Weekly, Time, Fortune, Sports Illustrated. I grew
Amazing.
up with all of these magazines, like
Amazing.
legacy, iconic
Yes.
brands. This goes back to thinking about when I was a little girl. Never could I have imagined that I would be not only a successful business person, but like working with those brands, just like my
Iconic
job,
brands.
iconic brands, my dream job. And I have to tell you, I almost didn't go for that job. When I first saw the job description, I was working at AOL at the time. Now I'm really going to date myself. I was working at AOL and I saw the job description and all I could focus on, this is such a confidence thing, lack of confidence. All I could focus on was the fact that I didn't have magazine publishing experience. And I was like, I don't know. Why would they take someone like me? I don't have magazine publishing experience. And it took a male colleague of mine to say, okay, you're crazy. This is the perfect job for you. You're perfect for this job. You might not have magazine publishing experience, but you have digital media experience and you're great at building bridges. You're great at building relationships. And that's a big part of this job. And he really encouraged me to go for it. And thank God I did. I mean, I ended up working there for 10 years. It was like an amazing 10 years. But you know, there's that study that Hewlett Packard did that shows that men will apply for a position if they have 60% of the qualifications, whereas women, we feel like we need to have 100% of the qualifications, right?
100.
I mean, that's the confidence gap right there. Whenever I share that statistic, it's like, that's the confidence gap. So there's so much to unpack in that story that I just told you. The one thing that I would really encourage anybody who's listening is just don't underestimate yourself. Don't underestimate yourself. Don't focus on what you don't have, the qualifications you don't have. Focus on the qualifications that you do have, and you can stretch into the rest.
Well, and tell me more about that. So you got the job. How did you manage? I'm sure though you got the job, but I'm sure those doubts didn't go away as soon as you got the job. How did you manage that? You're president of this iconic company, the daughter of immigrants. You've made it.
Yeah.
How do you manage those doubts that come up for you as you're in this new role, this new big, beautiful role?
Yeah. When I find myself in those moments where I'm doubting myself, where I have that negative self-talk, maybe there's like a little bit of imposter syndrome. What helps me is I actually go back to the evidence. I look at what have I accomplished in the past? I actually keep a journal where I write down anytime that I have a win, anytime I achieve a goal, anytime I have a great parenting moment, whatever it might be, or if I get a nice email where somebody gives me like really nice positive feedback, I have it all in a journal. And I literally will go back to that journal because it reminds me of what I'm capable of. It reminds me of the things that I've accomplished in the past. And it gives me that little bit of confidence boost that I need. So that's something that's helped me, is going back to that. I'll also think about if I'm about to embark on something and I'm really nervous about it, I go back and think about like, what process did I use last time that I had to do something like this? And the process worked for me last time. So I'm going to trust the process. I'm going to trust that it's going to work for me again. Those are just like some techniques that I use. Oh my gosh, there were moments, especially when I first started working at the company, and honestly, any company, anytime like I think about any new role that I've had, there's so much to learn. it's not just the functional stuff and the technical stuff that you have to learn, but even just like navigating the politics and navigating the culture and who's in a position of power and who are the key stakeholders, who do you need to get on board before the meeting, all those things. And one of the things that I found that's been really helpful to me is I really make the time to observe. I really like, I'll be in a meeting and I'll just be watching the dynamics. I'll be really looking for, okay, who really has the final say? Who's the key decision maker? I'm very thoughtful and methodical, and I don't need to bust in. I can kind of sit back and just really like take it all in and learn from it. I'm very comfortable with that. And I think it's a very underrated quality, actually, in this culture where it's like you want to get in there. You want to make sure that you're being heard. Yeah, that's really important. You want to speak up. You want to advocate for yourself, all of that. But there are also moments where hanging back and watching, hanging back and observing, taking it all in, that's data that you're taking in. It's human dynamics and human relationships, but it's data that can help you when you're then thinking about maybe an idea that you want to pitch or a presentation that you're going to be making to this group of people. And I think maybe because I'm an introvert, I'm more comfortable with the observing and kind of hanging back. But I think so much good can come from that.
It makes me think of, I worked at an accounting firm when I graduated from college, and there used to be like a story that the partners would take out the new associates to dinner, or maybe it was in the interview process. And if they salted the food before tasting it, they wouldn't get an offer because they didn't take the time to taste the food before actually determining whether they
whether it actually needed salt.
Yes.
Right. Whether it actually needed salt. They just started putting salt right on. That's so funny.
I don't know if that's true, but so what you were doing, you were observing, you were taking time to take it all in before.
Yeah.
Which is very powerful.
When you start in a new job, there's so much to figure out. It's okay to take your time.
I think there will be people in the audience who identify with this as, I worry, am I going to be too nice and not business savvy enough? Or those doubts come in. So having you here and having reached a lot of success in corporate and after, what are your thoughts to that? What would you say to someone listening?
Yeah, I would say that it's really a big part of the book, The Myth of the Nice Girl, is about how you don't have to choose between being nice and being strong. For example, I really care about the people that are on my team. I really care about them. And I have really high expectations of them. I can communicate in a way that's kind, but also direct. When I'm making a decision, I can get people's opinion. I can hear them out. But at the end of the day, I got to make the call. There's this like dichotomy that I think we all kind of live in. And I think the more comfortable you can get living in that dichotomy and not feeling like you have to be one or the other. I did a talk the other day, and there was a woman in the audience who said, I am the nice girl. She said, I'm really nice. I'm afraid that I'm getting passed up for opportunities. What I said to her is, it's so awesome that you're nice. Amazing. It's also really important, though, that you're ambitious, because you might be coming across as someone who's not ambitious.
Interesting.
And it's very common if you see somebody who's really nice and wants to be helpful, and you might jump to the conclusion that this person isn't ambitious. So I think being really aware of that like, okay, how do I show that, yeah, I'm nice, I'm a nice person, but how do I show that I also really want to get ahead? And I do have ambitions. And look, I think for me, a big way to show that is to be proactive and to create new opportunities that can help move the organization forward, whether it's thinking about a new market opportunity, or maybe there's a process that can be streamlined, or maybe there's a new employee program that will boost morale. Thinking about like these big things, bringing them to the table, and not only bringing it and saying, look, I think this is an opportunity. I want to lead it. I want to pull together a team. Let's get this done. So I think that's what I was hearing in her. She was getting passed up for opportunities. Maybe it's because people were sensing that she wasn't ambitious. I don't know for certain, but I've seen that quite often.
Yeah. So I do executive coaching, and something that I see in leaders is that a lot of leaders, and especially with women, is if I put my head down and work, people will notice. And one of the things we coach around is being their own best PR person for themselves, making sure that not assuming that people know. So let's say they're taking on those ambitious creating opportunities, and yet no one knows they're doing them. So what would you say to that, to those people?
Absolutely. This is so important because the personal branding and visibility is really important because when you develop a personal brand, that's a very strong personal brand. Guess what? You're going to be top of mind. You're going to be top of mind for people when they're thinking about who do we put in that role? Promotions. You're going to be top of mind for high profile projects. So making sure that when you create these opportunities or when you do really great work, when you have a win, you want to make sure that you're talking about it and that you're talking about it not in a way that feels icky, but it's even like if you're having coffee with somebody, just bringing up that, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I just finished working on this project. It was so rewarding, and talking about the project. And you're doing it in a way where you're storytelling, you're maybe sharing something that the other person can learn from. But while you're doing that, you're branding yourself. It's so incredibly important. And it's not about doing it, but it just feels so icky for me to go to my boss and take credit for this work.
I hear that all the time,
right?
All the time from clients.
It feels so icky. And it's like, if you flip it around so that it's not about this starting from in a defensive way, like, hey, I did that. That was me. It's not about that. It's really more about sharing and learning and storytelling. I feel like that the mindset is a really big part of it, a big part of getting women comfortable with the branding.
Yes, 100%. I hear this all the time in conversations of, I don't want to brag. I want the work to speak for itself. I prefer to put my head down and do the work. And a little bell goes off in my head, a little siren of like, okay, this is something challenging that thought, challenging that mindset, that belief.
You're right. It is challenging that mindset because the other thing too is I feel like it's even harder today than it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago in terms of like breaking through all the noise and all the content. We are all drowning in content because of digital. So if you think about how many things are going through my head or going through your head on a daily basis, so you have to break through that. You can't just assume people are going to know you're doing a good job. They're not going to be focusing on, oh, let me make sure that I know what's Fran working on. No, because they're completely overwhelmed with everything that is being thrown at them, all the content that's being thrown at them, all of the work, all of the home stuff. It's just a lot. We're all doing so much more and dealing with so much more than we were 10 years ago or 20 years ago. You can't assume, you can't make that assumption that people are going to figure it out.
What would you say is possible from your experience when you're able to do that successfully?
Oh my gosh, I feel like it opens up a whole world of opportunities because if you look at timing, I was there for 10 years. I was promoted a handful of times while I was there. My last job was president of digital. Because I was doing good work and because people knew about the work that I was doing, I was top of mind for people. So when there was a reorganization in the company and a new role opened up that was bigger than the role I was in, my mentors and champions would throw my name in the ring. They would say, oh, Fran could be really interesting for that. Fran could be really interesting for that. Because I was in their head because I was top of mind. So it's so, so important. I just can't stress it enough. If you're interested in growing either in the organization that you're in or even moving into a new industry, like if you're moving into a different company or whatever, making some kind of move, the idea is that you have a network of people and you might be meeting with people outside of your company that you might just be having a coffee with them or seeing them for dinner or lunch. You're going to be talking about all the great work that you're doing because you want to be top of mind for them too, that if they hear something that's really interesting where they work, that they would think about you.
You mentioned kind of coffees or lunches or dinners, the relationship building, which sounds like it's one of your superpowers. What would you say to people listening who might be thinking, I don't have time for that? I'm busy. I have
I
a
know.
family or whatever it might be. There's 100 million things going on every day.
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
Yeah. I know it's really hard to find time, but can you even just start with making a commitment to maybe set aside 1 hour a week where you meet with someone that is maybe not even directly related to what you're doing right now? Maybe they're not on your team. Maybe they're outside of your team, maybe inside the company, outside the company, but really make a commitment
Hmm.
to pick your head up, like you said before, pick your head up from the computer and really make an effort to meet, be open, be curious, meet with people that are doing different things that you're doing. Maybe they're working in different sectors. I actually started doing that years and years and years ago, where
Hmm.
I had this amazing woman who I would consider her a mentor. And I remember her saying to me that the reason she was able to accelerate in her career, and she had a really big job, really, really big
Hmm.
job, was because of how she prioritized building relationships. This floored
Hmm.
me. She told me that she would do 2 networking meetings every single day. So she would do a breakfast and then coffee in the afternoon, or she would do like a walk in
Interesting.
Central Park and a dinner. And I just remember thinking, oh my God,
Wow.
that's 10 a week. So I just took a step back and I was like, wait, she's got this really big, important job and she's finding time to do this.
Wow.
I've got to be able to squeeze in an hour a week. And
Hmm.
that's where I started. And if you
Wow.
think about it, that's like 50 meetings a year. It
Yep.
can be really impactful. I ended up getting on the board of this major nonprofit
Hmm.
through a
People.
lunch
Yeah.
that I had. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I ended up getting an offer from another media company.
Wow.
And when I came back and told my boss that I was seriously considering it, they gave me a better offer and I ended up staying. Like all these things that,
Wow.
well, you don't know what's going to happen. I love this story. I took a meeting with a young female founder. I was an executive at Timing, and she reached out to me with a beautiful, very thoughtful email, just
Hmm.
saying how much she respected me from afar and would love to get together. And I remember I was really busy at that time. And I was like, I don't know, do I have time? But her email was so thoughtful. I said yes. And let me tell you, that coffee changed my life
Hmm.
because she
Wow.
ended up telling me that she saw so many women in New York City who wanted to launch businesses, but that when they looked up, they didn't see any female investors or female advisors. And she looked at me and she said, Fran, you could be that person. And she planted this seed in my
Hmm.
head where, guess
Wow.
what? 2 years later, I ended up leaving and starting my own investing and advising practice.
Hmm.
I left media.
Wow.
And it was all because she put that in my head. And I started doing it kind of as a side hustle. While I was at Time, I started investing in female founded startups and realized I really like this. I could
Hmm.
really see myself doing this. And my
Hmm.
kids were so young. I
Hmm.
wanted to spend more time with them. And I thought, wow, what if I go out on my own, I'll have so much more flexibility. That was a big decision for me to make. This was 10
Yeah.
years ago. And it was all because I took that meeting.
Wow.
I hear you. I know it's so hard to find the time, but 1 hour a week,
Mm-hmm. I
I,
love
I,
that.
I bet
Yes.
you could do an hour a week.
I love that. And that seems a lot more manageable for people. I hear this a lot too. And because I love connecting, I love meeting. That's part of the reason I do this podcast because I get
Yeah.
the opportunity to talk to really interesting people. And one of the things that I hear is, well, I haven't done it. It's been years since I've been to a networking event or had a coffee, or I don't even know what I would say. It's going to be awkward. And I think just jump in, right?
Just jump in. I always love to start if I'm kind of at a loss, is just asking the other person like what they're working on right now that they're really excited about.
Hmm.
It's really such a great, especially if I'm at
Yeah.
a working event, because I don't want to assume that this person is currently employed. Maybe they're working on a community based project that's
Hmm.
really lighting them up right now that they want to
Hmm.
share. Asking a broader question
Hmm.
about what's lighting them up, what's exciting them right now, what in their world is exciting them, like just a broader question, I think sometimes is a nice opener.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, and then Fran, you mentioned leaving, pivoting out of corporate. You wanted more flexibility. You mentioned you had young kids at the time. Tell us about that transition, because I imagine that you're president of Time. You reached this level of success. You enjoyed this investing piece, this side hustle that you mentioned. I did a pivot from accounting, financial reporting into executive coaching. It was so hard for me to make that decision. It was the best decision. And yet there was a lot there. So I imagine that there must have been a lot there for you.
Yeah, it's very similar. The pivot that you made is very similar to the pivot that I made. I
Mm,
think the scariest part for me was the idea of leaving this platform,
mm,
Time Inc., where I knew I could call anybody and get a call back. And the thought of leaving that behind and wondering, are people going to call me back if it's
mm,
just Fran Hauser? It's not Fran
mm.
Hauser from Time
Time.
Inc., Fran Hauser from People Magazine. Do I have a strong enough personal brand? So that was really scary for me. And I think that's really why I decided to build the side hustle. It took 2 years. I was still at
Mm,
Time Inc. Like those last 2 years at Time Inc., I was not only doing it, the investing to see, like, okay, is this something that I like? Is this something that I see myself doing? But I was also building my network.
mm,
I was building my network of people that could help me transition more seamlessly into startup investing. So I was meeting other investors, I was meeting founders, because these were all people that I was going to need. Because the whole idea is like, to be an investor, you need deals, you need deal flow. So
mm,
who was I going to be getting the deal flow from? From startup founders and
mm,
from investors.
mm,
So prioritizing building out my network, it was almost like a safety like net for
mm,
me, knowing that yes, I'm
mhm,
going out on my own. I have all these people that can help me. So I think that that was hugely, hugely helpful in terms
mm,
of giving me the confidence to even, what do I need to know? I remember I took on an advising role where I didn't write a check into this company. I basically just said, look, I'll invest my time in
mm.
exchange for equity. I had no idea what to ask for in terms of equity. I asked for way too little. And then I ended up talking to other advisors who helped me understand, like, oh, this is the general range
Ah,
of equity that you should ask for. I'm like, okay.
yeah.
So having those people that have the knowledge is really, really helpful.
Mm. Do you mind telling us a little bit about sharing? One of the things that I've heard in coaching conversations and I experienced in my own life is that there can be almost like our ego is tied to our work. So I've heard this from attorneys who are leaving being an attorney or TV anchors who are leaving TV, being on TV to go do their own thing. Like their whole identity is tied to the thing and going off and doing this other thing that maybe is for you, you were leading this iconic company and then going and doing your own thing. I imagine there must have been like a little bit of, oh, I'm not with
Yeah.
time anymore.
Oh,
And
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, look, all throughout my career, when I was working at Coca-Cola, everybody knows what Coca-Cola is. Everybody knew People Magazine, even when I was working at AOL, back then. So it's definitely easier when you have a big brand that you're working for, a big consumer brand, by the way, that people, it's
just
instantly
know.
recognizable. There's more of a sense of comfort and confidence when you're introducing yourself. It's almost like a crutch in a way.
Mm, yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, it's like a crutch. It's like
Hmm.
you're leaning on that. And then when you go off on your own, it's like
Mm.
Fran Hauser. Like like I'm Fran Hauser, not I'm Fran Hauser with people, or I'm Fran Hauser with Coke or Ernst and Young or
Yeah.
all the other million places that I've worked. I swear I feel so old. I did a talk the other day. As I was talking, bringing up all these companies, and this woman right in the front, she said to me, she's like, "You've worked for a lot of companies." Like, I know I really have, but I was at each company for like at least 4 years. So it's not that I was hopping around. So I think that there's this big transition from having that crutch to not having the crutch.
Mm. To kind of owning and being confident in what you bring yourself,
Yes.
not the brand.
Yeah, not the brand. But I
Mm.
love it now. I've been an entrepreneur.
Mm.
It's been 10 years. And I feel so blessed that I
Mm.
can be a multi hyphenate, like, which right now I do. I have my hands in
Yeah.
several
Yeah.
different things. The one thing that I would say that I think is really important for any entrepreneurs that are listening is I actually find that it's more important for me now than when I was at corporate to do regular check ins with myself
Mm.
in terms of where do I want to spend time and where do I not want to spend time? Like
Mm.
literally having two buckets where I have, like, here are the big areas I'm going to focus on for the next 3 months or 6 months. And here's my to don't list. Here are the things that I'm not going to focus on. Like, as an example, right now, one of the things that I've decided not to focus on is taking on any new board roles. And when you make that decision, it makes the no so much easier when you get that ask. I've decided to not take on any new board roles at this time. right? So it's nothing personal. It's like
Right.
I've
Right.
intentionally and strategically made this decision for myself. And so because I'm in a bunch of different things, it's just even more important for me to say, hey, for the next few months, what are like my big initiatives? What do I really want to focus on? And then what are the things that I don't, that I just want to table? So I would say there's more of a checking in with
Mm.
myself that I
Mm.
wasn't doing as much when I was in corporate.
Mm. Yeah, you're being really intentional and thoughtful.
Yeah, it's a wonderful
Yeah.
problem to have, but there's so many opportunities and you
Yes.
can't say yes to everything. So just like you said, being very intentional about where you put your time and your energy, your mental energy, your
Hmm.
emotional energy, all of it.
And the reason I started this podcast was I had a big pivot. It was fine. Work was fine. They gave me flexibility, time with family, and also fulfilling. And I felt like I would have impact and have purpose. And so I started the podcast because I wanted people who felt like it wasn't possible to find a work that they enjoyed and brought them fulfillment and that they loved and be paid to do it. So it sounds like you've created that for yourself.
I really have. Every day, I have to tell you, this is going to sound so corny, but I know it is, but I love my work. I love
Mm,
it. I go to sleep at night. Literally, I fall asleep thinking about like, okay, what am I going to work on? So the first thing in the morning, it's all about the kids and getting them ready to go to school. And I drive
mm,
them to school and I love driving them to school. I love driving
mhm.
anywhere. It's like my favorite thing. I feel like they open up to me. We have great conversations.
Mm. How old
I
are your
love it.
kids? How old are
They're
your kids?
11 and 13. So they're both in middle school. They're sixth and eighth, two boys. And I love it. And I'm also so excited to start my work day. Like when I come
Hmm.
back from driving them, I really, really enjoy what I do. I feel like I'm making an impact. I feel like I'm
Mm.
helping people. I'm supporting women in the
Hmm.
workplace. I'm supporting women that are founders. I'm supporting women that want to write books. And by the way, I support men too. It's just, I do. I always
But
get
your
that question.
focus, yes.
What about the guys? Of course, of course. I've had the best male colleagues and male mentors.
Mm,
Amazing, amazing. But there's so many gaps, whether it's pay, whether it's the percentage of C-suite roles that are held by women. I mean, the list goes on
mhm.
and on and on and on. So there's just a lot more work that we have to do when it
Mm,
comes to women and
mm,
really supporting them. So I really love what I do.
mm. Oh, that makes me so happy. It makes me want to jump up and down and say yes. I want people to hear that. I want people to know that it's possible.
It
And
is. It absolutely is. And even one little exercise, and I'm looking at the time, I know we're going to wrap up soon, but one exercise that I'd love to leave with
yes,
everyone,
yes,
like,
please.
so anyone that's feeling disconnected from their work right now, maybe
Mm,
they're feeling stuck, they're just having a hard time finding joy in their work. I love this exercise. Look at your calendar
mm,
over the last 3 months
mm,
and pick out the meetings, the events, the appointments, whatever they are, that put a smile on your face. And then do the work to really think about like, what was it about that experience that was so
mm,
fulfilling? Like,
mm,
was it the type of problem you were solving? Was it the people that you were
mm,
with? Was it the skills that you were using? Really go deep into understanding what was it that was so fulfilling. And then is there a way that you could do more of that? Is
mm,
there a way that you can bring more of that into your current work? Or maybe it's a side hustle, but really doing the work to
mm,
figure out
mm,
what part of your current role is fulfilling. And is there a way to double down on that? Because
mm,
it's very easy for us to get into autopilot mode, to feel like we're in this rut, to
mm.
feel
Yes.
stuck, to look at all the things that aren't working. But take a step back, do this exercise. It's really kind of remarkable, like some of the insights that things you just might not be thinking about
Oh,
that
I
might
love that.
open up new doors and new opportunities.
I love that. But
Oh, I
maybe
hope
you can talk about the book that you wrote around embracing. Now I'm blanking
that,
on the name,
that's
but
right.
maybe you can share. Yes,
Embrace the
embrace
work.
the work.
Yeah,
Yes,
embrace the work, love your career. So this is actually great because it's a guided workbook. The exercise that I just shared with you is in this book. So there are a ton of creative prompts, writing prompts, little exercises. This is just really all about reconnecting with your work and creating a career that you love. And then I also want to share, Lupe, this
yes,
is
yes, yes,
exciting.
yes.
I don't know,
The new book. I need a pre-order.
my cute little
Oh,
journal,
it's so beautiful.
reflect and reset.
And is that
It's
out already or pre-order, right?
October 24th.
Oh,
You,
oh,
You can pre-order. It's a really simple journal. It's just 5 exercises. There's 5 sections. And literally, it's just like each section starts with a little prompt.
Mm.
And remember the to-don't list that I told you
Yes.
about? That's one of them. So there's space here to write your to-don't list.
Mm. Hmm.
But it's a really sweet, I think it just makes me feel good.
Books like that you just feel happy
Companion.
looking at them and
Yeah,
you
you
want them
just
by your
want to,
bedside.
that's it. Even if you just want to use it as a notebook, it's like totally fine. Do you know what I mean? It's just like
Yes.
really pretty.
It seems like you've done a lot of work on your mindset. Did you ever work with a coach, a therapist? I mean, you have these
Yeah.
reflections, these things that are like really powerful and deep to think
You.
through. So it just seems like
Thank
you've done
you.
the work.
I had an incredible executive coach,
Ah,
and MJ Ryan, and I worked with her when I came back from my first maternity leave. When I went back to timing, I had a really hard time coming back from maternity leave. It was just a really big transition for me, because I was out for 3 months and I really disconnected
good.
completely for 3 months, which is great. But then I came back and I was like, oh my God, I can't work the same way that I was working before because
Yeah.
I can't be here until 2 o'clock in the morning. It was a really profound time for me.
Yeah.
And I realized that I needed help. I realized that I
Mm.
wasn't going to figure it out on my own. I needed some different frameworks and some different
Mhm.
mindsets. And
Mhm.
MJ, I connected with her through a good friend of mine who was
Mm.
working with her. So I worked with MJ for probably a few years.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's funny because I haven't worked with her now in years, but sometimes I will say to myself, like, what would MJ do? Or like, what question would she ask me? It's like,
I do that with my own coaches. I'm like, what would Kristen say? What would Meg say?
yes.
Yes.
I had a great therapist for a while,
Hmm.
like who really worked with me at different points in my life.
Right,
I would say
right.
the last time that I worked with her pretty intensely was during COVID.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
Shocker. I don't even know how she did it, honestly, all the
Mm.
people that she was
Yeah.
dealing with during that time. So much of coaching and therapy,
Hmm.
so much of it is just asking the right questions, right?
Yes, 100%.
I just kind of try to get out of my own head and just ask myself
Hmm.
questions. And so over the years, I've just created all these questions. And
Mm.
that's why the workbook just made so
A
much
lot of
sense
sense.
for me.
Yes. Oh, I
Yeah.
love that. Thank you for sharing. That's a big promoting working with coaches too and asking the questions
Oh,
and like power of journaling and
oh my goodness. I just feel bad. Like you don't have to go through your career journey alone. It's so much more rewarding and fulfilling when you're supported by the right
mm,
people. And I
yes.
think coaches, therapists,
Hmm.
mentors, champions, like all of these people, they're all people that are there to support you.
Mm,
And don't be afraid to ask for help.
yes,
Okay? Don't be
100%.
afraid. We all need help sometimes.
Just really quick, there's a book I always recommend to clients who are entrepreneurs that's called Who, Not How. That a lot of people think, how am I going to get this done? How am I going to figure this out? And that the better question is, who can help me? And it's,
Absolutely. Oh, I love that so much.
mm.
I'm going to start saying that now. I love that.
Okay, so I know we're almost out of time. Just really quick, I'm really interested to learn more about, and I'm sure the audience who's ever interested in writing a book, you have a book collective, or I can't remember the name, but you
Oh,
help aspiring authors.
yes, yes,
So
yes.
I'd love for you to kind of share a little bit about that if you can.
Oh, I love this work so much. The name of the company is Bookbound.
Bookbound, yes.
And yes, I help aspiring authors who they have an idea, but they
Mhm.
don't know quite how to get started. And there are actually others who actually have a draft of the book written.
Mm,
And they're like, okay, where do I go from here? How do I get it published? Do I try to work with a big traditional publisher? Do I self publish? Now there's this thing in the middle, which is called hybrid publishing.
mm.
I feel like I'm really good at looking at an author and looking at a book and saying, this is the right path and
Oh,
just
interesting.
getting,
Yeah.
right, this is the right publishing path and this is how you can get started. I actually have a workshop on October 17th. It's in person, it's right outside of New York City in Cross River. It's very intimate, 6 spots. I have 2 spots left. It's 3 hours. I just love it because it's also you're building a community. So you're
Mm,
bringing aspiring authors together and then they become friends and they become
mm,
accountability partners
mm,
to make sure that they're doing the work and the writing. And so, yeah, I love helping authors, aspiring authors get published. It's interesting because I feel like that's not my main thing career wise right now, but it's something that I would love to see grow into my main thing
mm,
in the future.
mm,
So
mm.
I feel like I'm planting the seed and I'm loving it. So
Oh, that's so
anybody who
awesome.
wants to write a book, reach out.
I secretly want to write a book, Fran.
Good. Okay. So we should talk about that. Let's talk about that separately. I love it.
Yes. Okay. So if somebody can't take those two spots, where else
Yes.
can they learn about Bookbound and how they could work with
Yes.
you? Any
Yes.
workshops or how does it work?
Yes. Yes. So bookboundco.com is the name
Okay.
of the site. And they can just reach out to me. I can always do like a 1 hour
Okay.
Zoom with them.
Okay.
I do great virtual sessions.
Nice.
I'm happy to do that. Happy to do that. So that's the
Awesome.
best place to reach out.
Fran, thank you so much for your time. I've enjoyed this conversation so much. It's so
Me
lovely. Your
too.
energy is so lovely. There's just this
Um,
confidence, this calm, this just beautiful positivity. It's just
Thank you
very
for
nice to,
saying that. I
yes.
get the same. I'm feeling the same back from you.
Oh,
So
thank you.
I loved it. Such a great conversation.
Oh,
Thank you for having me.
thank you.